Yes, we have.
Okay, good. And now we can officially begin, I guess. So, do you want us to begin?
Sure, please proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the first debater for proposition. Today, we, the proposition team, will prove that the world can and must move to solid, clean, non-nuclear, renewable energy sources by 2030 with significant evidence and research. I will elaborate on my arguments from two divisions of the statement. That is, by 2030, first of all, the world can move to solid, clean, non-nuclear, renewable energy sector. Secondly, the world must move to solid, clean, non-nuclear, renewable energy. In the arguments of the first division, we will elaborate on why the world can move to solid, clean, non-nuclear, renewable energy sources by 2030, by looking into the fact that the world now relies much on clean energy in different sectors. In other words, we will prove the plausibility of the conversion to 100% renewable energy with evidence of successful examples worldwide. In arguments of the second division, we will elaborate on why we must move to solid, clean, non-nuclear, renewable energy sources by 2030, and the social benefits and brought about through converting to solid, clean energy in terms of positive effects on HDI, Human Development Index, health, employment rates, and education resources. We will further our arguments on the necessity for the conversion by listing the damages of continuing to utilize fossil fuels and nuclear power. Before I start elaborating on the arguments, let us consider the definitions of several important terms in the resolution statement. First, non-nuclear. Non-nuclear means including any of the generation process that involve nuclear particles. That is, neither nuclear fission nor nuclear fusion should be put in consideration. Second, solid clean. Solid clean is defined as something that won't emit any greenhouse gases during the generation process, and therefore it doesn't lead to any form of pollution, including water pollution and air pollution. Third, renewable energy. Renewable energy is defined as energy that is collected from resources which are naturally replenished on a human timescale, such as sunlight, wind, rain, tides, waves, and geothermal heat, and thus the risk of running out of resources can be eliminated. We believe that fossil fuel and gas aren't renewable energy because those resources take a lot of time to be replenished. Take fossil fuel, for example, it takes 2 million years to be produced. The above are definitions on important terms in the resolution statements. We will now begin our argument. First division of the argument, the plausibility of conversion. We believe that the world can move to solid, clean, non-nuclear renewable energy sources by 2030. This argument is supported by the following three reasons. First, renewable energy has already been widely applied to our daily life. Second, renewable energy generators can be installed in individual households, which enables people to generate electricity they need by themselves. Third, renewable energy is consistent in power supply. To begin with, we would like to stress the fact that renewable energy has already been widely applied to our daily life. I will demonstrate this fact with the example of transportation. Nowadays, more and more vehicles that run on electricity are roaming the roads each day. Public transportation means such as bus, especially utilize electric power system on a rather large scale. Just imagine how great it would be if we no longer breathe in any air pollution made by cars. That would really improve the quality of our life. Currently, more and more companies are doing research on new technology to improve the efficiency of electronic cars and to reduce the charging time. For example, ABB company from Switzerland did research on a great electronic bus system called Quick Charging Electric Bus System. With this quick charging technology, we need not worry about the problem of insufficient electricity. The electric bus can charge at charging stations, and within only 15 seconds, it can get 400 kilowatt electricity. At a bus station, it only takes 3 to 4 minutes to charge to acquire full electricity that a bus needs. Second, renewable energy generators can be installed in individual households, which enables people to generate electricity they need by themselves. For instance, smaller wind turbines can be set up in individual households, rural or agricultural areas for better efficiency without too much expense. For individual households in cities, people have incentive to install such a generator because they can sell surplus electricity back to power companies as extra income. Considering the mechanism, in the long term, the installation capital fees will be reduced to zero. For its application in rural or agricultural areas, we believe that this is the ultimate solution to the lack of power supply in regions where electricity network seldom covers. Third, renewable energy is consistent in power supply. Some people might say that renewable energy depends much on weather conditions and thus it is not a stable resource. However, this is a false claim. Today, we, the proposition team, will prove that renewable energy has a consistent energy supply by providing examples for across the continent. Take Germany, for example. According to Overall Energy, when in 2015, the average percentage of renewable energy accounts for 33% of the entire electricity supply, and the German government hope that they can achieve the goal for 100% of renewable energy before 2050. According to Tech News reports on May 11, 2014, Germany's electricity supply generated by renewable energy still reached 74% of the total electricity supply on a cloudy day. This is possible because just a few days prior to that, on May 8th, at the north of Germany, the sun as well as the wind was strong. On that day alone, the sum of electricity generated by renewable energy peaked at the highest generating capacity, providing 87% of electricity consumption. Aside from popularizing the use of renewable energy, trading of electricity can help ensure the consistent energy supply. With the technology of electricity storage now advancing in the steady progress, it is not difficult to foresee a mechanism in which countries around the world trade on surplus renewable energy sources they produce. Now, even on a smaller scale, we have witnessed the possibility for such transaction. For instance, Denmark's electricity generated from wind power can peak at 140%, allowing it to sell the surplus energy to neighboring countries, including Germany, Norway, and Sweden. With this mechanism, developing nations no longer have to worry about the lack of energy supply to power their development in the industry, because they got to buy clean energy, renewable energy in the global market created by such mechanism. Second division of the argument, the necessity for the conversion. For the second division of the argument, we will prove to you why we must move to solid clean, non-nuclear renewable energy. This argument is supported by following two reasons. First, when we develop solid clean energy, the inter-society benefits, especially in terms of positive effects on HDI, Human Development Index, health, employment rates, and education resources. Second, we cannot bear the consequence of destruction to our environment brought by the continuous usage of non-renewable energy sources. First, when we generating electricity from renewable energy rather on fossil fuel offers significant public health benefits. The burning of coal and natural gas can lead to air and water pollution, bring about breathing problems, heart heart attacks, and cancer. Replacing fossil fuels with renewable energy has been found to reduce premature mortality, and it's reduced overall healthcare costs as much as 361.7 and 886.5 billion. According to the International Renewable Energy reports, employment in the renewable energy sector will increase from the current 9.2 million global jobs today to more than 24 million by 2030. Renewable energy jobs will grow across all technology industry, with a high concentration in the same industry that account for a majority of the employment today, namely bioenergy, hydropower, and solar energy. Along the renewable energy value chain, most renewable energy jobs will come from fuel supply, installations, and equipment manufacturing. Education has long been considering the ultimate solution to alleviate poverty. The supply of reliable, cheap energy has for some time been a high priority in the developing world. This has huge potential positive influence in all areas of life, particularly education resources. Let us consider the following scenario. To improve the educational standards in remote region in a country, the key issue is definitely the quality of teacher training and educational resources for in-service teachers. In this scenario, if teacher is remote locations where they access these trainings and educational resources, internet and other information infrastructures have to be constructed. However, these infrastructures and sources require consistent energy supply, which is what the current power supply network is unable to provide. On the contrary, as renewable energy sources such as rooftop solar panels and wind turbines are put in use in these remote regions, quality online support, training, teaching resources can be provided consistently. This largely improved the quality of teaching and consequently improved the quality of students' learning. In short, application of renewable energy sources, including small standalone wind, solar, hybrid generators, enable teachers and students allowed to access quality educational information and resources without extensive infrastructure outlay. Second, we are not capable of bearing the consequence of destruction to our environment brought by continuous usage of non-renewable energy. IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, indicated that if we don't take any action to control the emission of greenhouse gases, the average temperature will rise 1.4 to 5.8 degrees Celsius from 1990 to 2100. And the sea level will rise 9 to 88 centimeters. Second, we must not use natural gas. American Environmental Defense discovered that USA released 65 billion cubic feet on natural gas, equivalent to the amount of methane released by 5.6 million compact cars. According to reports of World Health Organization, 7 million people around the world died from air pollution. Third, even if we utilize nuclear power and late clean energy sources, there will be radiation during the generation process. Peter Dutton, a person in Commission of Radiation Protection in Massachusetts Institute of Technology, illustrated that the amount of radiation in Fukushima increases 400 millisieverts per hour. To this intent, it reached the standard of the amount of radiation in American in 7 minutes. If you stay at such place, some health problems such as cancer, gene mutation, or other diseases will arise. with over 1 hour for exposure, one may die. From the previous mentioned problems, we must move to renewable energy because if we utilize non-renewable energy, it might not only cause problems of environment, but also cause diseases and death. We strongly believe that the world can and must move to solely clean, non-nuclear renewable energy sources by 2030. In conclusion, our argument is proven by the detailed reasons and evidence we provided. By 2030, we can convert to 100% renewable energy sources because, first, renewable energy is already being widely applied to our daily life. Second, renewable energy generators can be installed in individual households, which enables people to generate electricity for themselves. Third, renewable energy is consistent in power supply. By 2030, we must convert to 100% renewable energy sources because, first, when we develop solid clean energy, the entire society benefits, especially in terms of positive effects on HDI, Human Development Index, health, employment rates, and education resources. Second, we cannot bear the consequence of destruction to our environment brought by the continuous usage of non-renewable energy sources. We must act now because we only have one Earth, and we want to live on a healthy, clean, and safe planet. This is the only and the ultimate way to ensure the prosperity of the entire human being and the sustainability of the Earth. Thank you.
So I'll go ahead and start now. I suspect that most people think that the Earth is running out of oil or that the US and the rest of the world are addicted to its use. So in fact, the whole concept of this debate hinges upon these facts. Both beliefs are wrong, but in different ways. First, because the Earth produces oil in abundance deep within its mantle in ways that have nothing to do with dead dinosaurs and gives no indication of ever stopping this natural process. And second, because the use of oil for fuel and for thousands of other applications, not the least of which is plastics, is one of the great blessings of modern technology and life. All this is made dazzlingly clear in Dr. Jerome R. Corsi's book, The Great Oil Conspiracy. By way of explaining why there is so much oil within the planet, Dr. Corsi tells the story of the Nazi regime's development of synthetic oil after German scientists cracked the code God built into the heart of chemistry to form hydrocarbons in the first place, known as the Fischer-Tropsch process. It permitted the Nazis to pursue war even though Germany had no oil fields of its own. First, let us rebut the widespread use of term fossil fuels. It is a deception created by anti-energy propagandists and earlier theorists to make people believe that oil is a result of countless dead dinosaurs and decaying vegetation. Oil, however, is abiotic, a term that means it is natural product of Earth itself, manufactured at deep levels where there were never any plants or animals. Corsi writes of Thomas Gold, a professor of astronomy who taught at Cornell University. In 1998, he published a controversial book entitled The Deep Hot Biosphere, The Myth of Fossil Fuels, in which he applied his knowledge of the solar system, noting that carbon is the fourth more abundant element in the universe right after hydrogen, helium, and oxygen. Holtz pointed out that carbon is found mostly in compounds with hydrogen and hydrocarbons, which at different temperatures and pressures may be gaseous, liquid, or solid. Gold, who passed away in 2004, was way ahead of most other scientists with his assertion that the Earth produces oil at very deep levels, while telling the story of how the U.S. went to great lengths to acquire the data regarding synthetic oil production as our military overran Germany, and then took care not to let the public know about it. It was, after all, our own oil industry that had provided the fuel that aided the war effort in both theaters. Correspondingly, the oil industry had no reason to develop relatively expensive synthetic oil when billions of dollars in profits could be annually bringing to market naturally produced and reasonably priced hydrocarbon fuels, including crude oil and natural gas. Now, this mirrors the efforts of renewable energy producers, wind, solar, and biofuels like ethanol, to profit at the cost of billions of dollars in subsidies and loan guarantees paid by taxpayers, along with higher electricity and gasoline bills paid for by consumers, now all of which are mandated by the federal government. It is pure crony capitalism to enrich a few at the expense of all the rest of us. None of these alternative forms of power could exist or even compete without such government-mandated support. As Dr. Corsi points out, eliminating the fear that the world is running out of oil eliminates an urgency to experiment with or to implement alternative fuels, including biofuels, wind energy, and solar energy, as long as these energies remain less energy efficient, less reliable, and more costly than using oil and natural gas. There are, in fact, more proven petroleum reserves than ever before, despite the increasing rate at which we are consuming petroleum products worldwide, says Dr. Corsi, noting that the Energy Information Administration of the U.S. Department of Energy is on record that there are more proven crude oil reserves worldwide than ever in recorded history, despite the fact that the worldwide consumption of crude oil has doubled since the 1970s. So tell me why, since the Obama administration took over, have gas prices per gallon risen from $1.84 to $3.80 now, a rise of 105%. Then oil fell from $105 a barrel back to $25 a barrel. Today we have between the peak and lows at about $50 a barrel. The American Energy Alliance compared costs between 2009 and 2012, publishing them to reveal that we are all paying more for energy. The average monthly residential electricity bill has increased 6%, and annual household energy expenses have increased 31%. At the same time, the Obama Department of Energy increased new rules whose implementation cost more than $100 million each, 141%. The Environmental Protection Agency increase of such regulations increased 40%. The Department of the Interior, 13% total regulatory cost. All sectors went from $1,172 trillion in 2009 to $1,752 trillion today. Now, if you were trying to bankrupt the energy sector and its consumers, this is a great way to do it. The Obama administration came into office declaring a war on coal. It appears that Hillary Clinton is planning to do even more to hurt this industry, further restricting oil and natural gas exploration on federal lands and offshore, and wasting billions on solar, wind, and biofuel companies. The earth is not running out of oil and likely never will. Why? This is simple, and I will say it again. Crude oil is a renewable resource. It may seem hard to believe, but crude oil actually is a renewable resource, and it is being renewed right now quite naturally. First, we need to dispense with misbegotten idea my fourth grade teacher proclaimed crude oil comes from dinosaurs. At 9 years old, I knew she was out to lunch. Just how it billions of dinosaurs come together and become buried before they had a chance to rot, leaving behind just oil. So the real source of crude oil was established through an experiment performed by a company in Houston in 2004. They decided to test a Russian theory dating from the 1960s that says that crude oil comes from plankton in the sea. Here's the theory. So phytoplankton performs photosynthesis and absorbs CO2 from the air. The phytoplankton are eaten by zooplankton that produce tiny shells. When a zooplankton dies, they fall to the bottom of the sea. Their organic matter rots, but their shells leave behind calcium carbonate, CaCO3, a durable carbon-containing compound. Over millions of years, the calcium carbonate becomes bonded together into solid marble or limestone. Sometimes that marble is thrust up out of the sea, as it is in places like Vermont. In other areas, it can be thrust down in the earth, subducted. When it reaches a depth about 60 miles, the extreme pressure and heat causes calcium carbonate to react with water and iron oxide to produce natural gas, methane, CH4. When it reaches a depth about 100 miles, crude oil is produced. Note that when we burn crude oil, CO2 is released to feed the plankton to produce more calcium carbonate to produce more oil. Thus, crude oil is a renewable resource. And also, my opponent's definition of renewable was collected from resources. Therefore, my point reaches meets his definition of renewable resource. So how does the Russian theory stand up? The Houston experiment found that crude oil was produced in exactly the composition and proportions we find in the ground today. It makes perfect sense from a chemistry standpoint. It also agrees with everything we see in the distribution of crude oil and where we find it in the earth. The crude oil we find is percolating up from far below where we discover it trapped in the earth. The crude we see is like the coffee in the small glass bubble on the top of a percolator. Most of it is down below. There's a very interesting oil well on the island off coast of Louisiana. A few years ago, it appeared to be reaching the end of its productive life. Its production was declining. Suddenly, its oil production went up and the oil changed from a medium crude to a light crude. This means a younger source of oil was coming up from below. It's also worth noting that in the 70s, Saudi Arabian crude was predicted to have run out by now, yet the reserves have risen, and in all probability, younger crude is coming up from below. So what is the problem with crude oil? Lately, the surge in demand from China and India has upset the balance, and new oil production cannot be ramped up fast enough to maintain a healthy margin of supply over demand. We also have a problem with hedge funds speculating billions and driving the cost of crude unrealistic levels. Fundamentally, there is a gigantic obstacle to price stability in oil. It is the simple fact that Arabian Gulf states can produce oil for $1 per barrel at levels as high as they wish if they install more infrastructure. On the other hand, producing the oil we need in the US could cost $30 per barrel. That might look good when oil is $70 per barrel, but who would want to risk the investment if the Saudis could cut them off at any time? Of course, we could all subject ourselves to battery-powered cars, but no one has come up with a practical battery. A lithium battery typically loses 20% of its capacity per year. How many people would really want a car that had a range of 250 miles when new that eventually dropped to 200, 150, 150, and then to 0 miles as the years passed? After 3 years, they will likely want a new battery, but it would probably cost them around $10,000 or even more. I would love an electric car, but not with any batteries that exist today. Imagine on a cold day having to choose between heating the car with a battery and having a range of 50 miles, or wearing a snowmobile suit so you can drive 150 miles air conditioner. It would still be fun to drive on a nice days if you can afford it. So it all comes down to cost. We need cheap energy, and oil is nearly perfect for transportational purposes. It packs a lot of energy per gallon. It is easily pumped and produces a nice CO2 feedstock for plankton for it to be able to reproduce and make more oil. So China is moving to convert their cheap coal to oil. It's not a practical process, as you lose half of the energy in the coal during conversion, and the equipment is expensive, but China's costs are so low they may make it work. Importing oil is incredibly expensive to China at current exchange rates. Then there's Iraq. Iraq has the potential for cheap oil second only to Saudi Arabia, and it will be very easy to develop. When they do, the price of oil will come down. So why is it very few people have heard about the Houston experiment? It has a distinct ring of truth, and it is probably the most important scientific experiment performed so far this century. It may be that journalists just don't understand the significance, or they may still believe that crude oil comes from dinosaurs. Now, the long-term challenge is to find the cheapest way to produce oil and not to get undercut by the Saudis. This means improved technology to get to the deeper oil that we need, knowing that crude oil is renewable, and moreover, realize that now we do not have to seek an alternative fuel. We already have it because it is available.
We'd like to ask you some questions. You mentioned that oils could be doesn't come from fossils and can be made by Earth itself. But our question is, one of the major causes of pulmonary disease influencing people worldwide is the pollutants produced by fossil fuels. Since air pollution is a threat that is fatal to our lives, how can you say that it is feasible to keep on developing non-renewable energies, particularly fossil fuel, an energy resource that will harm the entire human being?
The thing is that it's not a fossil fuel, because if it was really a fossil fuel, such as they say, if we look at their theory that saying that it comes from dinosaurs, it's automatically out, because mentioning the well by Louisiana, if they were really running out of oil, then why was there new light oil being pumped up? So taking out the dinosaur theory simply meaning that it's not a fossil fuel.
From your early claim that oil is a renewable energy, which faces much opposition from scientists around the globe, why do oil companies such as BP still said that mining for new oil field is so costly that and they decided not to explore for new sites? If your early claim is believable, where do you find those renewable oil fields?
So I just want to say that we're saying it is renewable because of the zooplankton and how it creates more CO2, so therefore it is able to make more oil. And renewable, our point, the way we explained it, does meet your first speaker's definition about renewable, therefore proving my point that it is collected from resources and not from dinosaurs, meaning that it's not a fossil fuel.
Well, methane can only be seen as a form of gas, not oil. There isn't any data indicating oil being found in space. How can you be sure of that?
Can you repeat that question?
Wait a second. We rearranged the question. The question is mistaken, but the question is supposed to be: the upper mantle is so oxidated that it will cause an oxidation of hydrocarbons after they are formed. However, burning is the only oxidation that will occur in hydrocarbons. And there will be only CO2 and water left after the oxidation. In other words, whether oil will be produced from this process remains highly controversial. So,
we're a bit confused. It sounded more like a statement rather than a question. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the question?
how is it possible that oil is generated by the mantle?
So phytoplankton perform photosynthesis and absorb CO2 from the air. Now the phytoplankton are eaten by zooplankton that produce tiny shells. When the zooplankton die, they fall to the bottom of the sea. Now their organic matter rots, but their shells leave behind calcium carbonate, CaCO3, a double carbon containing compound. Over millions of years, the calcium carbonate becomes bonded together into solid marble or limestone. Now, sometimes that marble is thrust up out of the sea, as it is in places like Mermaid. In other areas, it can be thrust down into the earth or subducted. When it reaches a depth about 60 miles, the extreme pressure and heat causes calcium carbonate to react with water and iron oxide to produce natural gas, methane, CH4. When it reaches a depth about 100 miles, crude oil is produced. So whenever we burn crude oil, CO2 is released to feed the plankton, therefore making it reproduce and make more oil.
Derail. Well, even if oil is renewable, there's still the problem of monopoly. Take Russia and Ukraine, for example. In the 1970s, there's a so-called, in 2006, there's a so-called dispute of the gas that is sent into Ukraine, so that Russians cut off the gas sent into the Ukraine, causing the people in Ukraine can't receive enough gas for the winter to heat up their heaters and make it through the winter. So it causes monopoly for the countries that own these kind of resources and causes unequal distributions.
All right, to answer your question, well, that's a very strong point that you made, specifically because you're focusing on the businesses. However, if we're focusing on businesses, well, then there's the reliability that we have on renewable resources. Now, if we were to take your renewable energy definition, our oil meets the burden of the definition. So oil technically is a renewable definition. However, the renewable energy that you're planning to take has no reliability because the quantity of energy that is needed to be made in order for, because you're focusing on individual households. However, if you want to include businesses in this would include a larger scale. So if we want to include a larger scale, the reliability that you have on the renewable energy that you want to use is simply out of the question. It cannot be used. It cannot meet the burden of the amount of energy that is to be made. Does that answer your question?
I think you're on mute.
Yeah.
Wait. Are you muted still?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Well, we are not concentrating on individual household generating of energy. We're talking about a larger scale of windmills, of.
That's not. That was not what your first speaker said. They were saying about how they were going to implement on individual households.
Well, on individual households is mainly in those areas that where energy networks are not that well developed, such as South Africa, where places where electricity can't reach them generated by fossil fuels. So they have to have individual producing of their energy so as to provide them daily needs of energy resources.
However, there would still be no strong reliability, considering the fact that most of that renewable energy has to focus a lot on the surroundings of their environment, including weather. So that's a reliability that doesn't exist.
Well, the reliability is not that much of a problem because according to researchers, we can use, like, in the daytime or when it's cloudy, when it's not cloudy and it's sunny, we can use solar power. But when there's clouded and at night, we can change into other kind of renewable powers like wind turbines and other kind of generating of powers. So that would not be such a problem.
However, you can't always predict whether it would always be windy or when it will be sunny or when will it rain.
Yeah.
So therefore, the reliability that you're focusing on does not exist.
Taking, for example, windmills, it wouldn't work out very great considering the fact that it may not be windy every day, therefore not producing the quantity or amount needed in order to give power to the community or just the area around.
Not only that, but let's also add on to the fact that, yes, there may be windy that day, but you might not produce the amount of energy needed for that scale, right? Because you also said that you're focusing, if not on individual households, because that's the contradicting I don't seem to understand. However, you said that if not focusing on individual households, you're focusing on a larger scale. Well, if you're focusing on a larger scale, that energy will not be enough. It cannot produce as much energy.
Yes, such as one of the things I said about when the first speaker said the point about having batteries. So let's take, for example, lithium battery typically loses 20% of its capacity per year. So that means the mile range would drop each year 15. And in order to get a new one, the price is very high, sometimes making it not affordable to some people, costing over $10,000. So yeah.
Okay. So we're answering the first of your questions is that we will not generate enough energy to meet our needs. because you said that because of weather or different conditions, we can't generate that power. But that's the reason why we have to use a combination of different kind of renewable powers, such as solar, hydro, and wind power, and
I
I
understand.
don't know.
I understand that. I understand it. But however, we're focusing, like you said that you were using that type of energy for individual households. However, not all individual households are going to have the amount of money needed to use all those options. Let's take into account the economic basis of this. Why? Because not everyone has the means in order to afford such electricity. So instead, we should focus on what we already know it's renewable, and we can focus on oil as it's already a renewable resource, and instead use it and solve the issue that we're trying to solve today because it's already solved.
Because we mentioned the individual households just as a benefit, extra bonus with renewable energies is not the main thing we're focusing on. The main thing we're focusing on is we can change non-renewable energies into renewable energies for the larger scale, for the whole world, and not just for these areas.
Well, if you're focusing for the larger scale, wouldn't you say that still you won't be able to meet the burden of the amount of energy needed? It has been seen in many studies that even though you have many options as regarding to renewable energy, as you try to explain, that they still do not meet the burden of the amount of electricity needed for it to last a whole day.
Well, we still have time because the time is until 2030. We still have about 14 years to develop these kind of energies.
However, wouldn't you say that that's a dangerous appeal to future? We do not know what might happen, so wouldn't that be a logical fallacy?
Oh, because data show that the development of renewable energy is rising by time being so at 20 because the chart says that renewable energies will finally take over non-renewable energies by time, because the use and the trend of renewable energy is rising. Also, there's the companies and enterprises.
Also, there are many enterprises and companies started developing the technology of renewable energy. So we might not know what might happen.
Which is an appeal to future or appeal to science. However, we're looking at the facts that stand today. The facts clearly state today that the energy produced by renewable energy sources, as you speak describingly, do not meet the burden of the amount of energy needed for the people in a large scale, like you said, focusing on a large scale.
Well, about the future that you mentioned that were unknown, right?
Right.
Also, we might not know what conflicts and things would happen because of the use of non-renewable energy, such as World War III would happen because of oil crisis, because of the monopolize of these countries.
If we are indeed, I mean, it is a logical fallacy then, right? You're appealing to future. We do not know. What we know today, though, is that oil is a renewable resource, so therefore we should just use oil, right?
Well, reports show that we actually could meet the needs at 2030, because it is a trend right now of using renewable energies. Because take for example the COP 21st UN Climate Change Conference in Paris last year. Countries around the globe reached an agreement with the development of renewable energies. It seems that using renewable energies has become inevitable. On the contrary, if you insist that we keep on using fossil fuels, which is the opposite of global agreement, how can you persuade people to support your stance and continue using unclean energy?
Well, the climate change would be just a psychological fallacy, considering the fact that weather can't be predicted. they've been telling us that yes, climate change has been there for a while now, and that the Earth's getting hotter. However, you can't predict global warming. It's not true. I mean, what they mean to create is to have an infrastructure for transporting the energy that may not be better than what is already in place. You cannot predict the weather. It's just weather. So that's just simply an appeal to science, and appeal to science aren't true. Can we, would you guys like to move on to the next speech?
Well, we have another example of renewable energies completely taking over the non-renewable energies. For example, Costa Rica reached 98% renewables in the near future, and had already reached.
In 2015, Costa Rica has already reached 98% of the use of renewable energy.
Oil is renewable.
However, oil is renewable, taking into consideration that
your definition, the definition that you provided at the beginning, you clearly
it meets the burden.
Yeah, it meets the definition that you guys provided. Oil is a renewable energy source, meaning your definition. So, I mean, the issue that we are sitting here to discuss is already solved. Would you like to go on to your next speech?
Okay. I believe that the next speech will be the opposition rebuttal.
All right. So today we are here to discuss the reliability of renewable resources. Now, going on to the definition provided by the opposing councils, our renewable resource, which is oil, clearly meets the definition. Now, going on to the points they made, there's a problem with the renewable energy that they're trying to make us adapt to. Now, there's the reliability of supply. One shortcoming is that renewable energy relies heavily upon the weather for sources of supply: rain, wind, and sunshine. In the event of weather that doesn't produce this kind of climate conditions, renewable energy sources lack the capacity to make energy. Since it may be difficult to generate the necessary energy due to the unpredictable weather patterns, we may need to reduce the amount of energy we use, which means that this would be a vicious psychological fallacy contending the climate change. If the weatherman can't predict the weather a week in advance, how can we tell the weather years from now? How do we really know that global warming is true? This is all an appeal to science. They have all been saying that the glaciers will melt for years now. It has not been getting hotter at all. Now, it's difficult to generate in large quantity also. Another disadvantage of renewable energy is that it is difficult to generate large amounts of energy as those produced by coal-powered plants. This means that either we need to set up more or such facilities to match up with the growing demand, or look out for ways to reduce our energy, or simply look at the solution that we have presented today, because clearly oil is a renewable energy. It is not a fossil fuel. It has never been proven to be a fossil fuel. That is all a big misconception. Now, Jerry Taylor, the senior fellow at Cato Institute, wrote an article titled Alternative Energy in the Dock. It says that the underlying premise of energy policy that the federal government must act to promote alternative energy is dubious. If investing in alternative energy makes economic sense, investors will make those investments on their own free will, because that's how profits are secured in the free market. If investing in alternative energy does not make economic sense, investors will rightly eschew those investments, which is why no investors have invested in renewable energy, because they know that oil is a renewable energy, so they keep their businesses up, because instead of going on to renewable energy as presented by the opposing council, they rely on the renewable energy that we're presenting today, which is oil. And if oil is a renewable energy, then that keeps the businesses up because it is reliable and doesn't have any other problems regarding climate or any kind of other barriers. Now, moving on, several recent bills would either subsidize or mandate alternative fuels and or vehicles. However, the 30-plus year history of federal attempts to encourage such alternative includes numerous failures and few, if any, successes. So we need to look at demographics today and look to see what is in our best benefit. We cannot appeal to the future. That's a logical fallacy. Instead, we have to look at the facts as they stand today. And the facts clearly say that oil is a renewable energy source. Now, we have to do something logical fallacy is simply creating a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. There is no problem. The issue that we were presented to discuss today has already been answered. Why? Because oil is a renewable energy. It meets a definition provided by the opposing counsel at the beginning of this discussion. Now, there's a bunch of logical fallacies all over the place. There's the argument from consequences, availability bias, the big lie technique, circular reasoning, either or reasoning, and excluding the middle. All of these, which say that renewable energy is an option. However, it is not. Why? Because renewable energy is already here. Oil is the renewable energy we need. Hydropower resources are limited by geography and are something located in remote areas. So clearly, all of the other options, as they argue, to try and make a combination of the other options to generate as much power is not enough. They will never generate as much power as we have today. We live in the 21st century, and up to this day, we have a need to change to another source of energy because we know that oil is renewable energy that is used. If there are no questions, I will stand down.
Are there any questions?
I don't think so.
Several things we would like to clarify. First, whether oil is renewable is still highly controversial. Second, renewable energy will not be influenced by weather. Geothermal doesn't. Hydro doesn't. Most importantly, the electricity generating system that power our automobiles today will be influenced by weather. Third, whether global warming is a reality or not is irrelevant to this topic we are addressing today. What we should focus on is the damage that the utilization of oil brings us today. The dirty air, oil prices, instability.
And we would like to clarify a few things that were mentioned by our opponents. First, we must admit the fact that CO2 emissions is increasing due to the usage of fossil fuels. And in addition, renewable energy resources, including solar, wind, hydro, have now been widely used in many countries, and we can all see the benefits it has brought to people. For example, if transportation means are completely powered by electricity, fuel costs will be reduced to zero and we'd have a much cleaner environment to live in. Yep. And let us start by considering the significant progress that nations and enterprises around the world have been making, which has contributed to decarbonization. As we stated earlier, Germany decided to promote non-nuclear and renewable energy in 2011 and has made much progress in it. Costa Rica, a developing country in Central America, also relies on renewable energy very much. Costa Rica has a huge amount of reserves in petroleum, but the government still decided to reach the goal of using 100% renewable energy by 2021. According to Costa Rican Electricity Institute, Costa Rica utilized 98% of renewable energy in 2015, with hydroelectric power taking up 66% of the country's electricity supply, wind farms 16%, geothermal 14%, biomass 2%, and solar 0.02%. Costa Rican Electricity Institute announced that fossil fuel is no longer a main energy, but a backup energy resource in Costa Rica. Next, let's look into the situation of Japan. After the Fukushima disaster in 2011, 43 nuclear power plants in Japan have been shut down, and the use of renewable energy in Japan has thus been promoted. The electricity generated by renewable energy in Japan now accounts for as much as 25 gigawatts, which meets the electricity demand for almost 8,600 Japanese households. Japanese government is now actively promoting the use of solar or wind energy, encouraging the construction of offshore wind turbines that capture the strong monsoon blowing through the coast of Japan. The government hopes to replace all polluted non-renewable energy. Using renewable energy has already become a trend in Japan. From the examples mentioned above, we can see that converting to renewable energy resources is a universal agreement. Developed nations as well as developing nations are now seeking all possible means to change. With so many countries taking the lead to convert to renewable energy, we strongly believe that all countries worldwide will follow suit in this environmental act that is both technically and economically feasible. Apart from governments around the world, private sectors worldwide have contributed much and made significant progress in resorting to renewable energy resources. Many well-known companies are promoting the use of renewable energy or investing on renewable energy businesses. For example, Google has been promoting usage of renewable energy for a long time. They have invested much in wind power and solar power. To date, they have purchased 2.2 gigawatts of clean energy, which accounts for replacing fossil fuels used in over 1 million cars. We have mentioned that renewable energy can increase global welfare, and I will focus on the aspect of education in this part. The All Power Lab in Berkeley, California, invented an electricity generator called Power Pellet. Power Pellet generates electricity by biomass, and it allows remote areas that lack electricity to generate electricity in a simple and cheap way. The Republic of Mali had generators that run on diesel fuels. However, since the Republic of Mali lack resources and importing diesel fuels may be a burden for the country, most of the diesel fuel generators could not generate electricity efficiently. With Power Pellet, people won't have to worry about the lack of resources. If a country has sufficient electricity, students can have more access to different technologies such as the internet for education because the infrastructure is well established. Education is a way to boost social mobility. With more resources for places like Republic of Mali, students can become more competitive with help of education, and thus get better jobs, which eventually reduces poverty. Now, I will begin addressing two major negative impacts if we fail to convert to 100% renewable energy by 2030. The first negative impact is that using fossil fuels will speed up global warming. The second impact is that nuclear fission emits radiation. Though nuclear fusion does not have these problems, there is still a long way to go before nuclear fusion can be commercialized. I will begin by elaborating on the negative impacts of using fossil fuels. The opposition teams say that we don't have to develop renewable energy since there are still enough resources in non-renewable energy. However, according to World Nuclear Association, the gas reserves can supply the world for 55.1 years, coal for 163.3 years, and uranium for 96.1 years. However, if we keep on using fossil fuels, the melting of iceberg caused by global warming will become worse. The United Nations 21st Climate Change Conference, COP21, held in Paris last year had replaced Kyoto Protocol with Paris Agreement. Countries have reached a consensus that the average global temperature should increase no more than 2 degrees Celsius as it was before the Industrial Revolution. Therefore, we should extend the use of renewable energy instead of fossil fuels to save our world. You may think since using fossil fuel produces lots of pollution, using nuclear energy would resolve this issue as it emits less carbon dioxide. However, nuclear is actually not a good option for the following reasons. According to research from National University of Singapore, the average emission of carbon dioxide released when using nuclear is 66 gigawatts. However, the carbon emission released by renewable energy is 50 gigawatts. Compared with renewable energy, nuclear power is still a high carbon energy. What's more, the radiation problem exists. Take United States as an example. The Indian Point power plant, which is only 25 miles north from New York City, has been reported to leak tritium, a radioactive substance. Radiation leak is harmful to the health of both human beings and animals.
It leads to gene mutation and critical diseases such as cancer. As for nuclear fusion, although nuclear fusion will not release radioactive substances like nuclear fission does, nuclear fusion is still in the experimental stage, which means we are far from the prevalence of commercial use with this type of energy. We can see that renewable energy has become a global tendency, and the use of renewable energy not only benefits all human beings, but also greatly contributes to global sustainability because, first, not only developed countries, but also developing countries use renewable energy widely. Second, the technology of renewable energy has been widely applied to our daily life. What's more, there will be two major negative impacts if we fail to convert to 100% renewable energy by 2030. First, the serious problems when using fossil fuels. Second, the risk of using nuclear fission and that nuclear fission is still in experimental stage. Renewable energy is not only a global trend, but also a way to improve the welfare of all humankind.
In conclusion, if countries around the world already have the capability to utilize renewable energy, why would they opt for oil resources, which are monopolized by only few nations and of which the price cannot be controlled by themselves? As we stated, even if oil is renewable, instability and regional conflicts that we observe today due to uneven distribution of oil still exist. We definitely cannot bear the consequence of the Third World War, which can be slightly foreseen due to the continuous usage of oil.
Therefore, we believe that the world can and must move to solely clean, non-nuclear, renewable energy sources by 2030. Thank you.
We would like to clarify some points, if you guys are okay with asking a few questions. All right. All right, so following your faulty premise,
Do you agree with the, are you agreeing with the theory that oil comes from dinosaurs?
Well, I think that the debate will end with the proposition rebuttal. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, fine. You say thank you.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Michael,
Yes.
is Mr. Cunningham still there?
Yes. He's-
All right, okay. How do you want to proceed?
Do what?
How do you want to proceed?
I don't know. It's really late where you're at, so I don't know
I
if
know.
you want to go home or you want to talk or whatever you guys want to do. We're all's well that ends well here.
Probably we have comments from both sides on the debate that they just had.
Okay. Go ahead.
What do you think? What just happened?
It would be great if your students would like to make some comments first. I mean, about the process of how they prepared for this debate, and also how they felt about today's session. And then I guess we can have my students try that as well.
Wait, what? Oh, so we studied and did some research based on a background of oil and stuff, and the dinosaur, how about fossil fuels and renewable energy. She did more of the renewable energy.
I followed the thesis of one of the professor at a college institution in which he was explaining how oil is a renewable resource. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they wanted to do a scientific inquiry because they were very upset with the current state of education, like you were mentioning. and that sometimes we don't really give them enough information to go on, and we go back to trying to just say that. And when I was young, they said we were in global cooling. You know, last 10 years, they said we're global warming. The problem is, I don't think we're in either. So we're trying to get them to challenge some of the theories to go out and see. Proof positive of what they're trying to say is that in 1950, Russia was one of the leading importers of oil. Today, they're one of the leading exporters of oil. And the only conditions that really changed is that they developed oil in areas that shouldn't really even have oil. China's drilling oil off the North China Sea there, very deep oil. Again, that's way below any biotic oil would have been able to produce. So I think they're trying to look at trying to stretch some of the tenets and trying to question it, and that's what they're trying to do, especially the concept, which seems to me to be really kind of a loaded question in the first place. How can you go to something renewable, and why a company's not really done that? Because the company wants to try to make money. If they could actually make money doing it, they would be pushing it. The companies are actually pushing not to do it because they're making more money, because they're manipulating the oil, because of people think that it is a fossil fuel.
For our debaters this time, they didn't prepare for the abiotic oil theory that was mentioned by our debater, and I told them that they would just focus on the, say, economic, political impacts that either one that they utilize, whether it is renewable energy sources, as we mentioned, or the oil or the fossil fuels will have all around the globe. And also, since the abiotic oil theory is not agreed upon by both sides, so yeah, so this time we certainly focus on the political, economic, and environmental effects that utilizing these energy resources will have on our planet.
Yeah, fully agree with what you're saying. What we're trying to do is that the realities are the assumption based on the current status quo is incorrect. The assumption, that's what we're trying to challenge here, that we're running a critique that the assumptions based on this economic model are at least best going to be a really bad logical fallacy. And at most, you know, it's based on such a premise that you know, oil is very sustainable. You know, we're having oil here in Texas that's actually, you know, Texas used to lead the United States in the production of oil, and then in the 1970s, it was said that Texas will be out of oil by 2000. And then today, Texas is producing about 55% of the oil here in the United States. And, you know, and then 3 or 4 months ago, oil was down to $25 a barrel. And unemployment rates here in Texas were astronomical, and they were laying off a bunch in the oil fields. Now today, oil's right at about $50 a barrel and going back up. It's just heavily manipulated, and there's no real reason for it, and will stay that way until people can get the truth out. So it's very important for kids to understand what the truth really is. So the kids here are fighting for the truth.
Yeah, totally agree with that. But I also have the questions you mentioned that Texas, the situation in Texas, where, you know, that there's a predictions that the oil will peak at 2000. Is that correct?
Yeah, oil was supposed to be completely in the United States. We're living proof of this besides Russia. But the United States in 2015 became the leading producer of oil again. Well, in 1978, I was in college, and they told us that by year 2000, the United States will no longer, you know, will be an importing country. Well, Jimmy Carter in 1980 came out, or 81, or I guess 80, came out with a sweater and, you know, saying about all this global problems, and we had to start importing oil and all this kind of stuff like this. And we got involved in all kinds of wars, and no telling how much millions of dollars, billions or trillions of dollars we spent, all because of this thing we're chasing for this foreign oil, all to say that we're producing more oil domestically now than we ever did before, and areas in which were completely dry, no longer were even being worked, are being reworked, and they're full of oil. You cannot fill up a dry well. If it was a good example would be a Coke can. Once you drink the Coke out of the can, it doesn't get more Coke from the bottling company, and it's gone. And if that's the theory, that it's under this idea of it not being renewable, and we're saying that the oil is being filled up from the bottom of the can.
I was always wondering if that theory is true, then is it a mere coincidence that where the oil field is found, they also happen to find the bones of the dinosaur, because that seems to be what we've been educated over the past decades or century. However, I'm thinking about perhaps there is another possibility that the information is actually monopolized by the few oil companies. They release the information that the oil is about to peak, is about to run out, in order to create that kind of psychologies in people all around the globe in order to get the oil price to increase. But after that, they found that this is probably not working, and why not we tell people that we still have other oil reserve, which is a reality. So then the theory of abiotic oil comes up. But I just still say that it probably remains controversial, because there are still many scientists now opposing about this theory.
Oh yeah, just like there's a lot of scientists that have gone on to climate change, when most of the scientists that got on to climate change say there is climate change, are getting money from places to promote the climate change. So all we're trying to do is offer a contrarian position to try to develop a debate in which, we're having like right now, because it's kind of interesting. I think that you're probably hit the nail on the head, and there's two things to look at when you think about that, Tony. One is if the oil companies do know this and are manipulating it, we're being played as a fool in the public, and students and future leaders of the world need to know exactly that, oh my gosh, maybe we need to look at some things a little bit differently. I think that they are able to do that because we have this sense of urgency that we would not necessarily have if we knew it was going to be like the water system or whatever, and I would equate it very similar to water system, except like water is kind of like it's always been there. It's not necessarily always going to be at a place that you need it. But oil is reappearing at places that were completely dry, and it's reappearing back in those places. So that's very, and that's been documented for about the last 17 years. But the Russian research on this is around 56 years old and very, very detailed. And that's what Russia's model's been. And they're blowing and going to, 1997, Russia was on the teetering again of another collapse financially. And not only 91, and now they have more gold than any country because they used all their oil for gold.
Michael, I'm sorry. I just wanted to acknowledge how much we appreciate your challenging your students to think critically, and also challenge the information that they have always been given. So I think this is a very good way to get the students to think outside the box, instead of just following the suit or following the trend that we've always been fed with information that we assume is always correct. And so I think, and I also want to mention the fact that your students are very well prepared, and they're very eloquent, and great job on your side. And I think both sides were well prepared. So let's give a round of applause. So Michael, you have been coming up with very brilliant students all these years.
I know, and these girls are freshmen too. They're in the 9th grade.
Ah, so these are really with potential.
Yeah, you'll see them for a couple of years, I hope. So
and could you ladies introduce
to impress Tony today? So this today was, we wanted to impress Tony, really a great So we wanted to come up with an idea that we knew that we could try to stress Tony, because we know Tony's group was going to be so amazing, like they always are.
Yeah. Now, in addition to Roy, you now get to know Tony.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, your new president was inaugurated the other day. Did Roy get to go to the inauguration?
I'm not sure, but a lot of us were watching it live.
Yeah.
Those of us who are teaching, at that time.
I'm watching live
You
now
watch it live.
as well.
See, we're having a political election here too. I don't know if you heard about it or not, but, and so we're probably the laughing stock of the world at some particular point. So.
We're trying not to laugh. I think the world is trying not to laugh. I mean, it's a serious.
Well, it's hard to have a serious discussion sometimes with people that come out as characters on both sides.
We're trying very hard not to laugh. Yeah.
What is the Taiwanese policy on the two China or one China policy?
I think that we're open this to all the students here.
Do you mean individual opinions, or do you want?
Like, what is your opinion? Because I understand still, we're still having some problems with mainland China on different things, and there's still. You guys know more about it than I do. I was just wondering, anytime we get an opportunity, what is it that you would like to see for foreign policy from our end, from the United States end? What would you like to see the United States do or help with that situation?
So I think that's take a poll first.
So what is it? Is there a more, I don't know, specific question that you would like us to ask our students?
Yeah, what's Taiwanese? What do your students see as U.S. role in helping Taiwan develop as a major power in Asia?
Okay, you understand the question.
So what can you do?
Or what do you think the role of U.S. in helping us or assisting us? I don't know. You can elaborate on that.
Or maybe you think it's none of our business.
Business?
No, I say maybe you think it's not any of our business to try to help.
Or do you think that it's none of their business? They should stay out of it, or do you want U.S. to intervene partially, entirely? I don't know. Partially. What do you want them to do?
In terms of what?
In terms of, I believe, the threat from the mainland China, because I think that some people in Taiwan might be afraid of the political threat from China, but we still relies on our economy still relies on China very, very much. So I believe that, in my opinion, I think that maybe the U.S. can.
So I think that Rita is trying to say that we need the assistance from U.S. to build up a defense mechanism that can protect us from political threats from China.
Or at least neutralize the threat.
Yeah, neutralize the threat, and that by after 1979, that would be by providing weaponry, especially like fighting jets or something like that.
Yeah, because we're still the basis of your defense against China, correct? We're still under the TITO Treaty or Southeast Asia Treaty.
So probably striking a balance, I would say.
Because one of the correlates that several of our candidates are trying to get a diminished capacity for the U.S. around the world, or to have the other countries pay for it or something. And I was just asking. And then another question I was going to say, how popular are Taiwanese dramas with your students?
What kind of dramas?
Like TV dramas. I watch Korean dramas, Chinese dramas, Taiwanese dramas. Do your students watch dramas much?
You guys watch dramas? Taiwanese dramas? Korean dramas, Japanese dramas? I personally don't watch any dramas.
Oh wow, that's really a good cultural thing to do. I'm watching a Chinese drama right now, Amazing Boyfriend, which is
it's probably good for a foreign language learner, but for a native speaker, it's I'm sorry, I'm going to say this, it's a sheer waste of time because we have better things to do.
Okay, well, then that's kind of like how we feel sometimes when people just you know, I appreciate that. That's good.
But it would be good for a foreign language learner, just like, you know, a lot of the series in the US, probably you wouldn't watch it, but it's good language learning for us.
Yeah, our culture too. I mean, you get a little bit with the
Right.
culture.
And it has the cultural elements. I totally agree.
Yeah, you know, that's why I was just wondering, especially now, how many languages do your students speak there?
Do dialects count?
Oh yeah, especially in Chinese.
Right.
There are so many dialects.
Well, I mean, how many can you speak?
Yeah.
Like, for example, how many languages do you
I
speak?
even could for some.
Yeah. So, okay, so for example, I speak Taiwanese, Chinese, English. I've almost forgotten my Spanish, and I also minored a little bit Japanese, but then I forgot all those. Okay, so yeah, something like that.
Okay, wow. Tony, how many languages do you speak?
Now, currently, perhaps the one that I can master, 2, perhaps. And a few months later, I will be able to speak Cantonese.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. You speak Mandarin and Cantonese then?
I beg your pardon.
No, he's going to Hong Kong to study in mid-August, so that's why he's going to be, you know, mastering the Cantonese language then.
And which language and which school are you going to go to in Hong Kong?
Hong Kong University of Science and Technology.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's a really good school. And what are you going to study?
What have you just said?
What are you gonna study?
Global business.
Oh, right. In the business school, global business program.
Wow. Boy, you'll really have a good job when you get out, huh?
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, that's probably one of the best financial centers to learn about, you know, trading, and you're going to one of the best schools.
Yeah, I think that is the best business school in Asia. Right.
Mm-hmm. I had a friend that teaches at a law school over there too, and they really enjoy Hong Kong. It's just the cost of living is very high.
So, Michael, thank you today for this great session, because I need to be sending the children, the high school students home now. Some parents probably are at the main gate waiting to pick up their children. So, thank you again for this great session. I think we definitely should do these debate sessions, like at least on a regular basis, at least maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a year. I think that's how we're carrying this out.
Yeah, and if we recycle it, then we know it's renewable.
You mean recycle the debates?
No, we do it over again. We know it's renewable.
All right. Okay.
Hey,
sure.
Now you're getting it. Okay, we'll talk to you later.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Have a nice
Bye.
Bye.